Effie, and this is going to be a random sort of reading vlog where I try and make some progress on some arcs. There's no kind of real rhyme or reason, just thought I would vlog and keep myself accountable by vlogging. So there's 4 books I particularly want to finish this week, and hopefully I'll get even more done, but then 4 is kind of ambitious. So I'm roughly halfway through Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. Same for Awakened, I'm about halfway through. And then I'd also like to read You Watched in Silence and Thorns from the Fall. So to be expected, I am really enjoying Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. I had meant to vlog it more. I'll insert some clips here of my thoughts earlier on into the reading process. I'm about to start Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, which I think I'm gonna love. Everything about this book feels like it's gonna be a really me kind of story, and that makes me simultaneously excited and really, really nervous. In case you didn't know, I am a massive fan of vampires. Like, it is catnip for me, basically. I really love vampires. I love all kinds of unique tales on vampirism, and just I read a lot of vampire books. Like, you can see Diary of Blood just behind me, and I'm sure there's other vampire books scattered around. Most of them are on my floor because I'm currently doing 50 Days of Vampires on Instagram. So I had to pull out all the vampire books from my shelves to take photos. But needless to say, I absolutely adore vampires. And then add into that the fact that V. Schwab is one of my favourite authors. I'm just gonna like duck my head. So you can see there's, okay, so that's my Sophie Snow collection. But that's all V. Schwab, and then also up to there I think is V. Schwab. Yeah, because I think that's Alexis Hall and that's S.T. Gibson. Those 2 shelves represent the majority of my favourite authors. I do also have a Sierra Simone shelf over there. But yeah, that's basically my favourite authors shelf. I am a massive fan of V. Schwab as well as vampires. So combining these 2 things means that this should be near enough a perfect book for me. And yeah, I am nervous to pick it up because of that, because theoretically this should be very me. But what if it isn't? And then there's a part of me that goes, Effie, be logical about this. The vast majority of V. Schwab books are a 5-star read for you. In fact, I think I could, like, right here say what wasn't a 5-star read for me. So the Shades of Magic graphic novels, I had trouble with the art style, so those weren't 5-star reads for me. And then I think it's just the Cassidy Blake series that weren't 5 stars, but that's more to do with the pop culture references than the actual writing. But apart from that, I think they're all 5-star reads for me. So the likelihood of me loving this is very, very high. And I don't know. I'm nervous, but excited. I can't wait to dig into this. From what I've been hearing, this is closest in like Schwab's writing to Addie LaRue, which I, you know, it was a 5-star read. They were all 5-star reads. Was, you know, something I loved. I mean, to say that I loved Addie LaRue might actually be an understatement, because this is my copy of Addie LaRue. Well, I have multiple copies of Addie LaRue, but this is my copy that I read. Actually, this is from my very first time reading Addie LaRue. I just completely like tabbed it up. It's full of annotations. I just had such a good time with it. So if this is anything like Addie LaRue, I think I'm going to love it. Also, I believe there's a crossover. Like Addie LaRue is a standalone, and like Schwab's always maintained that's a standalone, but it may, well, not may, if there is a crossover in this, it does exist in a wider pantheon. And I think that's really cool. I don't know. Apparently, I don't have many words to say on this, just that I'm simultaneously excited and nervous, and I guess we'll see how I get on with it. I'm just putting together tonight's meal, and I figured I'd do a quick update on how I'm getting on with Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. So I have finished the first section, which is only 2 chapters long. So we've got 3 point of views, I believe. We've got Maria, Alice, and I can't remember the third one. I very decidedly have avoided virtually everything about this book. So I know it's vampires, I know it's sapphic, but that's kind of the limit. I'm making a gnocchi dish, by the way. I really like getting food subscription boxes from Gusto. I think their portioning is pretty decent and they have really good selection. I did try, this is not about Gusto, but I did try HelloFresh for a while and was just so disappointed. The quality of the food, the portioning, the selection, just rubbish. So anyway, I'm making this from Gusto. It's this one. Looks pretty delicious. Also looks really easy. It's a 1-part, which can, oftentimes that's you start it on the hob and then you pop it in the oven. But this one, literally, you just pop straight in the oven, or in our case, we use the Ninja for everything. So you just put it straight in the Ninja. Okay, so chopped garlic, but I can grate it. Yes, I can grate it. Not feeling like getting a knife and a chopping board out today. So I'm just going to grate my garlic. So yeah, I have finished the first section, which is 2 chapters of Maria's point of view. And I'm vibing. There's something about the Schwab's writing, and I think it's just because I've read all of their back catalogue. I'm very familiar with this style, and it's a style that works for me. But it feels like slipping into a warm bath. There's something so comforting about this, this style of writing. And even if I'm not immediately in the plot because it's slow and lyrical, which is very much standard for a book by V. Schwab, I am still immediately absorbed, which is good because I've been having a hard time recently where I've been picking up books and they haven't been inherently bad, but they just haven't sucked me in. So it's such a nice change to pick up something that has sucked me in, basically from the start, I'm enjoying it. I am definitely seeing themes emerge. So I'm pretty sure it has been kind of part of the marketing has been to say that this book explores themes of gender, and that's certainly something that I've been getting from at least the initial bit that I've read so far, is that we are getting kind of an exploration of gender, identity, etc., etc. And I'm really enjoying that. It's interesting because I think there's a fine line between the character being unhappy existing under patriarchy and them actually like having issues with their own gender. So yeah, I'm definitely seeing stuff emerge. There was like a character that you kind of meet very briefly that has the vibe of being a vampire. Whether she is or not, I don't know. But it's kind of like an outsider sort of character, and then like she leaves town and like someone's died in their sleep. Have I got more to say? Like, I'm enjoying it. I'm annotating as I go, so it is a little bit of a slower process than it might otherwise have been. I'm sure I'll be back plenty of times with plenty more thoughts, but that seems to be my thoughts for the moment. So I started the audiobook whilst like gluing my figurines, and then I remembered that I wanted to be annotating my copy as I'm reading it. So I got up to the point that I'd already previously gotten up to. And then I was hybriding, so I was listening to the audiobook whilst reading physically so that I could annotate the bits that I wanted to annotate as I was reading. And I'm now up to, I think it's page 92. That's where the audiobook cuts off. That's the end of the first 12 chapters. And I am vibing. I think the audiobook is incredibly well produced. All three narrators are exceptional and really bring these characters alive and in a way that feels very authentic. I can see why this book may not be for everyone just from the first 92 pages, because at this point we've had like whisperings of vampires, but the vampire element hasn't been introduced yet. It's a very gently paced book, but I think there's something about the way that Schwab writes that means that I really enjoy that. So I generally like my books to be a bit pacier. I like to kind of get where we're going, but the way that Schwab's lyrical poetic writing is, I can really appreciate the journey. It feels perfectly paced to tell the story that it needs to tell. And I'm very much enjoying the way that we're slowly building out these characters, seeing their desires and motivations, and really getting to love them. And I think it sets up a story that could be heartbreaking. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard to know if this is going to be one that ends sadly. And I mean, I guess we'll see. But Schwab isn't afraid to kill characters. So I can completely imagine going on this 500 plus page journey with these characters and them not all making it out the other side. I'm also very excited to discover the intricacies of the vampire lore in this book. Like, I suspect Gravedirt plays a part just from like a couple of kind of hints that we've seen on social media. But I suppose we'll see. That's the update though. But yeah, I'm just having a really good time, like I expected I would, given all the Schwab books I have behind me. I really enjoy the way that the three women's stories are braided in almost unequally, so you get more of two of their stories, and then the third one kind of comes in later. Well, I mean, at the point that I'm at, we're not getting so much of the third voice, which makes it really interesting, and it shows the echoes and mirrors between their stories. I'm having the absolute best time. But, you know, vampires, Schwab, of course I'm going to be in heaven. And then I really like the fact that in Awakened, it's a very slow, gradual horror as you build up the tension and you're going, okay, how's this going to end? Is it going to end poorly? It feels like it's going to end poorly. And what I particularly like is both of these stories, in very different ways, are looking at what makes us human. And I think it makes for a really interesting pairing, reading these two books together and seeing the similar conversations they're both having, but in very different arenas. Like, one is almost zombie-esque and one is vampires. I'm sure I'll be back later with more thoughts. I'm desperately hoping I can finish Bury Our Bones before I head out today, because I'm going for a meal with B, my partner, and hopefully I've got enough time to finish it before we head out. I should have enough time, but we'll see. Please excuse the moody kind of sunsetty lighting. Dusk, twilight, is that whatever time of day it is. So we went out for a meal and it ended up, so it was a tasting menu, and it was only 6 courses, I think. So it's 5 courses, but there was an optional course. So it was only 6 courses and it ended up being 3 hours, which was quite nice. You know, you like when you very rarely head out for it to feel like an occasion, an event, whatever. But I didn't manage to finish Bury Our Bones before going out because I've been listening to the ALC, even though it came out yesterday, I think now. But I got the ALC and just life stuff meant that I didn't finish the ALC before it came out. But I've been listening to the ALC on the NetGalley app, and it said that I had a certain amount of time left, and I was like, perfect. That should be the right amount of time. I should have enough time before I head out, as long as I get up at a sensible time, which I obviously did today. So I did, and then like I'm getting to where it says it's got like 12 minutes left, and I look down and I go, but this isn't the last chapter of the book. So I look, and I think there's like 5 more chapters. They're very short chapters, but I think there's 5 more chapters. So it's going to be one of these where like it gets to like 120%, and that's it completed when it's at 120%. It's this weird glitch in the app at the moment. So I think I've got about 20 pages left. I'm reading it physically and annotating alongside whilst I listen to the audiobook. Really enjoying it, having a fantastic experience. Really have enjoyed this book. I loved the way that the 3 narratives have braided together, and they felt kind of unequal, but in a way that meant that each narrative was only there when it felt truly necessary to progress the story. I think some people might find it a bit slow, and you know, that's valid. Like, if a slow book isn't for you, but I found it just one of those where you just got swept along in the lyricism of it, and I've really enjoyed the feeling of quite a unique vampire lore. I will come back and give like a proper review when I finish, but I'm hoping to get those last 20 or so pages read. But other update, so because I was annotating, I didn't want to take Bones with me when I headed out, but I have like an hour bus journey each way, so I have to take a book. I mean, even if I didn't, I'd probably take a book. So I took Awakened with me, and I've now got, I think it's roughly 100 pages left. Okay, so I'm on page 260, and this book's got 352 pages. This is an ARC edition, so the final page number might be a little bit different, but this says it's got 352 pages. So I've got 92 pages left, and yeah, it feels like, what's the best way of describing it? It's like horror that whispers. So I feel like Bones has been kind of everywhere, and you probably already know, but if you don't, Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil is the tale of 3 women from 3 very different times who become vampires And like that's basically the plot of it. It's so weird because it's obviously genre fiction because it contains, I mean, I'm really bad at like classifying books, but like it's genre fiction because it contains supernatural elements, but in a lot of ways it reads like a lit fic where this story is the journey, like it's very much slice of life. I don't know, I think it's one of those books that really hard to describe, but essentially like the tagline's been like toxic lesbian vampires. Like all three of these women are, I think they're all lesbians. Like it's not explicit, well, one of them explicitly says on page and the others don't, but they're all primarily shown as having a preference for sapphic relationships. And yeah, so that's Bones. And then Awakened takes place 30 or 40 years in the future, and essentially a neural chip has been developed that would enable people to cut down on the amount of sleep they had. And, you know, it's been touted as, oh, you don't have enough time in the day, you don't have enough money, blah, blah, blah. So there's been like a large uptake, and then something went wrong. And these people with the chips have become these monsters, kind of zombie-esque, called the Sleepless. And we're following what you're led to believe might be the last bastion of humanity that are holed up in the Tower of London. And they were very majorly involved in the creation of the neural chips. So they're trying to work to find a cure. They're trying to reverse it. And like that's essentially the story, but all through it, you've got this sense of mounting dread. Like, where is this story going? How is it going to go really disastrously? And also, even beyond the supernatural scientific horror elements of it, you have got a group of people in close quarters, and people are going to people, and tensions are going to rise. And I don't know where the last 92 pages are going to go, but I found it incredibly gripping. As I say, it whispers more than it shouts. There's been one kind of overt horror action scene, but it's mostly been very intimate, very quiet moments, and it's told through what feels like journal entries mostly. So that makes me think it's heading in a certain direction. But yeah, that is my update on my reading. And I'm now going to go finish Bones. So I finished Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil. I mean, that was never in question. I didn't have terribly long left of it anyway. So yeah, I read those last 20 or so pages, and so much happened. It was incredible. Also, it was really cool that the ALC and the physical copy had slightly different endings, like not in a really substantial way, but this slightly tweaked ending just hit so much stronger and was such a cool way for the book to end. Like, it doesn't materially change it, it's just wording, but like the original, I say the original, I don't like the ending in the physical copy was strong, but the one in the ALC just made it even stronger, and I had a fantastic time. I think there's going to be people that don't vibe with it because it's so slow and lyrical, and maybe they don't like the way that the narratives are very slowly braided together. It's not an equal distribution of these 3 point of views, but the way it's done makes so much sense. Oh, I just had the absolute best time with it. Apparently I have no words for it right now, and I have gotten to around 50 pages left of Awakened. I definitely think the whole idea of like the true horror is humanity and capitalism is kind of building up, even though we have these horrific creatures known as the Sleepless. They don't really seem like much of a threat. I don't know. I'm very excited to see where this story ends though. So I finished Awakened, and I'll be honest, it kind of felt like it went a little bit off the rails in the last bit. Like, I think, how to describe it? So throughout the story, you've got this sense of unreality, which makes sense in a book that is largely devoted to like sleeplessness and obviously insomnia, like extreme insomnia, can breed some interesting effects in humanity, including a sense of unreality. So that has been braided through the narrative, but it really comes to a head in the last portion. So I think I've said before, it's written sort of like diary entries, and it's broken down into like separate months, and at the end of the penultimate month something happens, and then the last month the format's different and it feels like you've got a different narrative voice in that final month. And I'm not sure, like, I found it very difficult to understand what was happening. There were some very clear things that happened that you went, oh, this truly is horrifying. But do I really know what the ending was? I'm not sure. Like, I think it was still an incredible book, very solid, but I struggled with what the implications of the ending was and what actually happened. But yeah, overall I think I enjoyed it. I think it's definitely a book where you would probably get more out on a reread, as you understand where the story's going and you understand what elements are truly important to the story that's being told. I don't know what else to say on that. In theory, I should be moving on to Thorns from the Fall and You Watch in Silence. My plan is that Thorns from the Fall, I'll read as what I call my bed book. I always read before bed, but I only have a big light, so in bed I'm always reading on my Kindle. So that's what Thorns from the Fall theoretically is going to be. But You Watch in Silence is a very specific chapter that the author's very excited for people's reactions. So I want to at least be specifically vlogging that chapter, and it'll likely be B-roll of my reading and reacting, obviously completely spoiler free, as this book doesn't come out for months. That's my plan. So during the days I will be reading that. But I just found out that Sophie Snow, one of my favourite authors, whose books are just behind me. Can I move? Yeah, you can just about see them next to the Schwab books. So Sophie Snow is one of my favourite authors, and her next book, Dearly Unbeloved, comes out next month, and she sells on her Etsy shop. So if you want a signed and dedicated copy, you can buy them directly from her. And I have just found out that her Etsy shop's reopening tomorrow. So I would like to have a reread because I beta read it. And I'm excited to actually read the arc, see the finalised copy of it. I would like to reread it before the Etsy shop reopens to see if there's any specific quotes that I would like her to put in my copy. As one of my favourite authors, I buy like every edition she puts out. So let me just grab them, or let me just grab some examples. Okay, so this is my Sophie Snow collection. And as you might be able to see, there are 2 copies of all of them except for Naughty or Nice. So what she does is she puts out a standard edition and a discreet edition. They are largely the same, although there's oftentimes a little bit of extra content in the discreet edition that's only available in the discreet one. But mostly I just want to support her. Like, mostly I just want, like, every book that she puts out, even if it is largely the same book. So generally she's put them out at separate times, but with Dearly Unbeloved, both the standard edition and the discreet edition are going to be released simultaneously. I think the release date's the 1st of July. I'll pop on screen if I've got that incorrect. So I want to grab both of them, and I want to have reread the book before the shop reopens tomorrow, so that when it does reopen I can pre-order both editions and see if I want any specific quotes in them, I guess. So hopefully I can make really good progress on that tonight. I'd like to get completely reread tonight, but also it is fantastic, so I don't want to feel like I'm rushing through it. If it takes me longer than tonight, it takes me longer than tonight. And then I'll move on to Thorns from the Fall and You Watched in Silence. So it's Sunday and I'm still reading Dearly Unbeloved, which isn't for a moment like me saying anything negative about Dearly Unbeloved. I am loving it. It's getting me in all the feels, even though most of this book I've already read before because I read it like months ago. But it's getting me in all the feels. It's making me feel really emotional. I identify with a lot of the character of Rose. Oh yeah, I've completely forgot to tell you what this book's about. So it's a contemporary romance where 2 roommates who hate each other end up getting drunk on a trip to Vegas and get married. And then they decide that it would be mutually beneficial for them to stay married for 3 months. But obviously, like, as it goes with this kind of thing, feelings start creeping in. So yeah, I'm still reading Dearly Unbeloved, and that's largely because my brain's being wacky this week. I'm finding that I'm ending up sleeping way too late. Like, I somehow have this delightful combination of insomnia and hypersomnia, in that I really, really struggle to get to sleep. And then when I do get to sleep, I sleep for way too long and way too late. So what's been happening is I've been waking up quite late in the day and then not feeling like I can get things done. And for me, getting things done is basically feeding myself and reading. Like, just surviving. So yeah, I'm having the absolute best time with Dearly Unbeloved. I think it is absolutely fantastic, and I can see the little changes. Like, it was already an incredible book when I read it, but seeing these little tweaks, oh, fantastic. I'm so excited to own it physically, and I'm so excited to get to read this arc. So once again, my sleep was all out of whack today, and I woke up super late. So now I've got almost 800 pages to read in 2 days, which is technically possible, but it's going to be a real stretch. I did start Thorns from the Fall before falling asleep, and it's got a really nice, like, here's what you missed last time kind of catch-up section, which I liked. And then I didn't really get far in because I think, like, the first part is just kind of going over what happens at the end of book 1. But I'm so happy to be back with these very toxic vampires, and I have no idea where the story's going to take me. But as I mentioned earlier in this vlog, in my waking hours, well, as if I read in my sleep, in my hours when I'm not in bed, I'm going to try and read You Watched in Silence, which I think's like sapphic, YA horror. Like someone's like a nanny for a family vlogging channel and then weird things are happening or something. I'm very excited to dive in. Thorns from the Fall, by the way, is like a vampire hunter and a vampire. And they're so toxic for each other. It's going to be really hard to talk about without spoiling things, but needless to say, book one ended very dramatically and leaves you wondering what on earth is going to happen next. So I read the first 4 chapters of You Watched in Silence, which is not much in, but also not a terrible amount of the way in the story. And I'm really vibing with it so far. Our main character, Caitlin, feels like she's hiding some secrets and she's not necessarily there with the best intention. Like she's saying, oh, she wants to get to know the sort of life that other people haven't seen of this family vlogger. But I feel like there's more going on. Like there's some kind of controversy, death, something like that that's surrounded the family vlogger, so she's now in disgrace. And I'm like, oh, is that death related to Caitlin in some way? Intrigued to see that all unfold. Like the family vlogger feels very vapid, feels like she's not putting the truth forward of her life, which feels kind of accurate. And then there's these creepy twins that I'm really enjoying, and I like the way that it's sort of depicting the kids' side of family vlogging, in that they are so different than Caitlin expected them to be based on their on-camera personality. And they're kind of like, do you want us to film something? She's like, no, I just want to be your nanny, which is what Caitlin is there for. Yeah, I think it's going to be a twisty, turny book, and I'm so excited to see it unfold. So today's theoretically the last day that I have to read these books. I mean, there's no actual hard limits, but I would like to get them finished today. So I have about 2/3 of You Watched in Silence left and 96% of Thorns from the Fall. In terms of You Watched in Silence, I'm really enjoying the slow creeping. Are these things happening? Are they all in her head? Like, there's no sense of like knowing what reality actually is in this story, which I am really vibing with. I also think there's a lot of secrets. I feel like everyone's keeping secrets in this story, which is just going to make it so much more satisfying when we have a resolution. And I think that's literally all the thoughts I have at this point in time. I think it's technically going to be possible for me to get these 2 books finished today, but it might be a bit tight. So I'm still reading You Watched in Silence, and probably what I'll do is I'll roll over Thorns from the Fall into next week's vlog, because I feel like it makes sense to like start it in that. Well, I've already started it, but I'm only 4% of the way in, so it makes sense to read the remaining 96% in next week's vlog, basically. You Watched in Silence, I'm 75% of the way through. I'm just away to start chapter 24, and I still have no idea how everyone's going to connect, because I think, well, I've got a very strong suspicion that the connections are more than they seem on the face of it. But I just wanted to kind of hop in because obviously family vlogging and the dark side of family vlogging, like all family vlogging is morally bankrupt, but like specifically this kind of family vlogging is being stared at straight on, and it's just had a conversation about one of the particularly dark aspects of it. And also there's an implication that the person doing the family vlogging is actually a willing participant in the darker side of things and actively feeding that darker side, which is horrible. But, you know, I really appreciate that it is not shying away from like every nook and cranny of moral bankruptcy that exists in this world. I'm about to hit the chapter 29 mark, so I've read the first 28 chapters. Duh. Like, how else would I be hitting the chapter 29 mark? But yeah, I'm about there. I'm guessing this is the chapter we get all the answers, everything slots into place. I have a theory. It's a theory I've had for most of the book. So I'm interested to see if I'm correct. Like, part of me thinks no, part of me thinks things would have been set up a little bit differently, phrased a little bit differently if my theory was correct. But I'm very, very intrigued to see how this is all going to shake out and see if it's shocking. I imagine it's going to elicit a strong reaction, hence why there is a chapter 29 challenge. But let's just get stuck in. Oh my gosh, I could barely read through the tears. Wait, what? What? Oh, that was a theory I had, but I didn't. Oh, I'm way too good at guessing things because I did think that. Or maybe. I don't know. I've got to keep reading and find out what's going on. Well, chapter 29 was definitely where all the threads came together, and oh, it was so satisfying. Like, I kind of feel bad for some of the moments that I really enjoyed, but it was delightful. I'm just a bit sad that this book's almost over. I think I've got one chapter and an epilogue left, but it's been such a good ride. And I love how it's explored the darkness of humanity and family vlogging. So I finished You Watched in Silence, which kind of course I did, because I only had one chapter and an epilogue left. And I thought Lee did some really interesting and smart things with this book that I really appreciated. I ended up having just such a good time. I enjoyed the way that paranormal horror and the horrors of the real world kind of merged into this interesting kaiju of a story, and I am thoroughly looking forward to rereading it in the future, as I've been told that it's a very different experience on second read, as you're obviously like picking up on different things. Even though I had some theories and those theories came to fruition, it was still incredibly satisfying. I think a lot of the time, especially if you read, within a genre a lot, so you understand genre conventions and tropes and you can pick up on the foreshadowing, it's less about whether you can predict it or not and more about like the way it's executed, and this was executed amazingly. So overall, I've had an incredible reading week, like finishing Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, finishing Awakened, rereading Dearly Unbeloved, and reading You Watched in Silence. And also, fun fact, all four were queer. As I said earlier in this video, I'm going to roll over Thorns from the Fall into next week's video. So that's going to be the first thing that I attempt to complete for that. But until next time, love you, and you can find me deep in the marginalia.